Dallas Cowboys fans woke up to a day that instantly grabbed everyone's attention around the league because a significant move has just shaken up the defensive outlook in Dallas. When a team known as America's team makes a move involving the pass rush, people take notice, and that's exactly what's happening right now. The Cowboys have made a trade that brings edge rusher Rashan Gary to Dallas, a move that immediately sparks debate about what it means for the defense, for the pass rush rotation, and for the team's bigger plans as the offseason continues to unfold. The trade itself is fairly straightforward on the surface, but the implications run much deeper when you start looking at the details. Dallas is sending a fourth-round pick in the 2027 draft to acquire Gary, which means the team does not sacrifice any draft capital in the upcoming season. That alone is an interesting element because it allows the Cowboys to strengthen a premium position without altering their immediate draft plans. For a team that has been looking for additional pass rushing help, bringing in a player with Gary's physical tools and experience gives the defensive front a different dimension. One of the first questions that comes up with a move like this is simple. Which version of Rashan Gary will the Cowboys be getting? Over the course of his career, Gary has shown flashes of being a disruptive force off the edge. His athletic profile has always stood out. He has the size, the power, and the explosiveness that teams dream about when they talk about building pressure on opposing quarterbacks. At around 6'5" and close to 280 pounds, he's the kind of defender who can line up on the edge, collapse the pocket, and force quarterbacks into uncomfortable situations. However, the production story across a full season has sometimes been uneven. When you look at Gary's recent campaign, a big portion of his sack production came earlier in the year. During that stretch, he looked like one of the most dangerous pass rushers in the league. Offensive lines struggled to contain him, quarterbacks felt the pressure quickly, and the impact was noticeable almost every week. But as the season progressed, the sack totals slowed down, which raised questions about consistency. Interestingly enough, the advanced pressure numbers tell a slightly different story. Even though the sacks were not piling up later in the year, Gary was still generating pressure at a respectable rate. That distinction matters when evaluating pass rushers, because sacks can sometimes be influenced by circumstances around the play. Pressures, on the other hand, often give a clearer picture of how frequently a defender is disrupting the pocket. In Gary's case, the pressure rates remained relatively solid, suggesting that the disruption was still there even if the final stat sheet did not always reflect it. From the Cowboys' perspective, this move addresses something that fans and analysts have been discussing for months. The defense needed more help on the edge. Pass rush is one of the most valuable assets in modern football, and teams that can consistently pressure quarterbacks tend to create more turnovers, force more mistakes, and give their secondary a better chance to succeed. By adding Gary, Dallas is clearly trying to strengthen that part of the roster. There is also an interesting strategic angle behind this trade when you consider the broader offseason landscape. The Cowboys have been linked to several pass rush options as they look to upgrade their defensive front. Sometimes those pursuits work out, and sometimes they lead teams to pivot toward other opportunities. In this case, Dallas decided not to wait around and instead secured a proven edge rusher through a trade. The cost of a future fourth-round pick places the move somewhere in the middle of the risk spectrum. It is not a massive investment that mortgages the future, but it is also not a completely negligible price either. Fourth-round selections can occasionally turn into solid contributors, so the Cowboys clearly believe Gary's presence on the roster brings more immediate value than holding onto that future pick. Another factor that makes this acquisition intriguing is Gary's versatility along the defensive front. While he is primarily known as an edge rusher, his size allows him to shift into different alignments depending on the situation. Defensive coordinators love players who can move around the line because it creates confusion for opposing offenses. A defender who can rush from the outside on one play and line up slightly inside on another gives the coaching staff more flexibility when designing pressure packages. Run defense is another aspect of Gary's game that could benefit the Cowboys. Edge defenders are often judged mainly by their sack numbers, but stopping the run remains a crucial responsibility for players on the defensive line. Gary's physical strength and frame help him hold the edge against rushing attacks, which means he is not just a situational pass rusher. He can stay on the field in multiple defensive scenarios, something every team values when building a balanced front. Of course, every trade comes with questions, and the biggest one surrounding Gary will revolve around whether he can deliver consistent impact throughout the entire season. If the Cowboys get the version of Gary that disrupts quarterbacks regularly and turns pressures into sacks, then this trade could look like a very smart move. On the other hand, if the production remains streaky, the debate about the value of the deal will likely continue throughout the year. What cannot be ignored, though, is the sheer athletic ability Gary brings to the defense. Players with his combination of size, explosiveness, and strength are not easy to find. When those traits are paired with the right defensive scheme and supporting cast, they can turn into game-changing forces. Dallas is clearly betting that placing Gary into their system will allow him to thrive and potentially reach another level. Another interesting layer to this story involves the connections within the coaching staff and defensive structure. Familiarity between players and coaches can sometimes accelerate the adjustment process when someone joins a new team. Even small previous connections can help a player feel more comfortable with terminology, schemes, and expectations. That kind of transition support could play a role as Gary begins integrating into the Cowboys' defense. The financial side of the move also adds context to the decision. Gary is scheduled to earn a significant salary over the next couple of seasons, which means the Cowboys will likely explore ways to manage the cap situation moving forward. Teams often restructure contracts or work on extensions after a trade like this to create more flexibility. That possibility could come into play depending on how the organization wants to balance the roster financially. All of this creates a fascinating situation for the Cowboys' defense as the offseason continues. Adding a talented pass rusher can reshape the identity of a defensive unit, especially when that player lines up in a position that directly influences the quarterback. Pressure from edge changes how offenses call plays, how quickly quarterbacks release the ball, and how comfortable opposing teams feel attacking downfield. For Dallas, the goal is clear. The defense wants to become more disruptive, more aggressive, and more capable of controlling the line of scrimmage. Bringing in a player like Rashan Gary is one step in that direction, but it also raises the possibility that this move might not be the final one. The Cowboys have shown signs that they're actively adjusting contracts and creating financial room, which often signals that additional roster moves could still be on the horizon. As the day continues and the offseason unfolds, fans will be watching closely to see how this decision fits into the bigger picture of the roster. One move can sometimes trigger a chain reaction of others, and when a team begins addressing key positions like edge rusher, it often means they are building toward a broader defensive transformation. And when you look deeper into what this move could mean for the defensive structure in Dallas, the conversation naturally expands beyond just one player. The arrival of Rashan Gary changes the dynamics of the pass rush rotation, and that alone opens the door to several interesting possibilities for how the Cowboys might shape their defensive identity moving forward. A defense that already had some intriguing pieces now adds another athlete capable of collapsing the pocket, and that type of addition can ripple across the entire unit. One of the most important elements in modern defensive football is pressure consistency. It is not just about getting sacks once in a while. The best defenses find ways to affect the quarterback repeatedly over the course of a game. When pressure comes from multiple angles, offenses are forced to adjust their protection schemes, sometimes leaving fewer receivers in routes or speeding up their timing. With Gary entering the picture, Dallas suddenly has another player who can challenge offensive tackles and create that uncomfortable environment for opposing quarterbacks. Another aspect that makes this move intriguing is Gary's physical profile and how it fits with the type of defenders the Cowboys have preferred in recent years. Bigger edge defenders who can hold their ground against the run while still threatening the quarterback are incredibly valuable. Gary checks both of those boxes. His frame allows him to anchor against offensive linemen in running situations, while his explosiveness off the snap still gives him the ability to attack the backfield on passing downs. That balance is important because defenses often struggle when their edge players are too specialized. Some pass rushers are excellent at getting after the quarterback, but become liabilities against the run. Others are strong run defenders, but lack the burst to pressure the passer consistently. Gary has shown flashes of being capable in both areas, and that versatility can help the Cowboys maintain flexibility in their defensive calls. At the same time, the conversation around this trade quickly leads to another major question that has been circulating around the league. Could this move be just the beginning of a bigger push to strengthen the pass rush? When teams start adjusting contracts and creating salary cap space, it often signals that they are preparing for additional activity. The Cowboys recently made moves involving contracts on the roster that freed up financial flexibility, and that naturally fuels speculation that the front office may still be exploring other opportunities. If that scenario plays out, Dallas could potentially build one of the more intriguing edge groups in the league. Imagine a rotation where fresh pass rushers are constantly attacking the offensive line. Quarterbacks would have very little time to get comfortable, and offensive coordinators would be forced to rethink how they protect the pocket. A relentless pass rush can change the identity of a defense almost overnight, and that is clearly something the Cowboys are aiming to improve. What also stands out about Gary is the way he wins his battles along the line of scrimmage. His game is built on a combination of strength and explosiveness. When he times the snap correctly, he can drive offensive linemen backward into the pocket, shrinking the space quarterbacks have to operate. The kind of push from the edge often leads to hurried throws, off-balance passes, or quarterbacks stepping directly into pressure coming from the interior. Another factor that cannot be overlooked is the psychological impact a new defensive weapon can have on the rest of the team. When defenders see their front office making aggressive moves to improve the roster, it sends a clear message about the organization's expectations. Competition increases during training camp, players push each other harder, and the overall intensity of the defensive unit can rise. Adding Gary could spark that type of competitive environment within the locker room. There's also the matter of durability and workload. A deeper rotation on the defensive line can help keep players fresh throughout the long season. Pass rushers often perform best when they're not forced to play every single snap. Rotating players allows defenders to maintain their explosiveness late in games and late in the season. If the Cowboys manage the rotation well, Gary could benefit from that approach and maintain his energy when it matters most. From a strategic perspective, defensive coordinators love having players who can be moved around the formation. Gary's size allows him to line up in different positions depending on the situation. On early downs, he can focus on setting the edge and controlling the line of scrimmage. On passing downs, he can shift into more aggressive alignments designed purely to attack the quarterback. Those adjustments may seem small, but they create constant challenges for offensive lines trying to predict where pressure will come from. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. In the endless churn of NFL speculation, a new name has begun to circulate around the corridors of league insiders and team facilities: TREY Hendrickson. The standout pass rusher of the Cincinnati Bengals is quietly emerging as a potential target for the Dallas Cowboys, and a mere possibility has already ignited debate among analysts and fans about how dramatically the team's defense could change. Sources close to the situation suggest Dallas has been monitoring Hendrickson's situation with growing interest. The Cowboys have long built their identity around an aggressive defensive front, and adding another elite edge presence could elevate the unit from formidable to overwhelming. Hendrickson, known for his relentless motor and knack for reaching the quarterback, fits the exact mold of player defensive coordinators covet when constructing a disruptive pass rush. While nothing concrete has surfaced publicly, the idea itself is intriguing enough to fuel the rumor mill. League executives know that Dallas is rarely shy about pursuing impact defenders, especially when the front office believes the roster is within striking distance of championship contention. In that context, Hendrickson becomes more than just a talented player on another roster. He becomes a potential missing piece. Pairing Hendrickson with the Cowboys' existing defensive stars could create one of the most feared pass rush tandems in the league. Opposing offensive lines would face constant pressure, forced to choose where to send help and where to risk leaving a blocker one-on-one. That kind of dilemma is exactly what transforms a good defense into a dominant one. Of course, speculation does not guarantee action. Trades and acquisitions in the NFL depend on complex negotiations, salary considerations, and timing. Still, the fact that Hendrickson's name is being linked to Dallas at all suggests that conversations, or at least evaluations, may be happening behind the scenes. For now, it remains firmly in the realm of possibility rather than certainty. Yet if the Cowboys were to make a serious move for TREY Hendrickson, the ripple effects across the NFC could be immediate. In a league where quarterbacks dictate outcomes, adding another elite hunter off the edge might be the kind of bold step capable of shifting the balance of power. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.